Let's look at what it's going to take to build out this project from a site perspective. Let's look at erosion control, demolition, grading, your site utilities, and paving. So we started with existing conditions. We saw what was on the site, but now we have a plan that shows what's going to be on the site. Let's look at those existing conditions again and how they impact what we're going to build. We had the property lines, and we can see everything that we're going to build is inside the property lines. We have the setback lines, and we can see that we're going to grade outside those setback lines, but we're not building anything outside of those setback lines, which is good. We have that overhead power line that we have to pay attention to, and the architect made sure that nothing was going to impact that. We have the limits of construction. This is something new. What this means is the architect said, we don't want you doing anything outside of this area. And the limits of construction are usually defined as the area of grading. You won't be doing anything outside of that. Now this is really important too. I have an example of when limits of construction really play an important role on a project I worked on years ago. We were designing a brand new Army base up in New York. And that Army base was finally being built. And they set the limits of construction to save all these woods in the area, right? So that lots of beautiful trees. And so the contractor actually had to take all their equipment all the way around these woods to get to the project site. And one day the contractor came up with this really bright idea that they would just bulldoze a road right through the middle of the trees and save themselves tons of time and fuel. So that's what they did. They bulldozed that road, and then all the equipment took that shortcut to the site. And then the general in charge of this project came out to the site and, in not too kind of words, yelled out what happened to his trees. And when he found out that that contractor bulldozed his trees, he made the contractor plant mature trees all through that area. One of the first things that you're going to do on the site is your erosion control, and that's part of the overall demolition, really. So the other steps that you're going to take is you're going to remove all the vegetation that you need to remove. You may sell some of it off for lumber. You may mulch other it and keep it on site. I've seen a lot of people just mulch the vegetation on site and use it. You'll have to protect other vegetation that's on the site if it was designated to be protected in the plan. You'll have to remove any structures, and you have to watch out for any hazardous materials in doing that. Are you going to recycle some of that material? Is it brick or stone or something that you can recycle? Or is it just stuff you have to dispose of in a proper way? Paving, if there's paving on the site that has to be removed, again, you have to make sure it's disposed of in a proper way. Maybe you can use some of it for fill material if you need fill material. Now, if there's any subsurface utilities that are going to remain, you got to make sure you protect them. And if they have to be removed, then of course you're going to have to remove them. And then you also have to protect any overhead utilities that might be on the site. This is often done by putting warning objects on the utilities themselves or warning signs at the base of the utilities, you know, where the vehicles are going to cross. You don't want to be running through a power line. So like we said, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to put in your erosion control. Obviously, the main purpose of that is to keep soil from eroding off the site and polluting up our waterways. But you also want to make sure it doesn't go into adjacent properties, off into the road, down the street, or whatever. You want to make sure that the soil stays on site. Your erosion protection must be able to accomplish that feat. Another thing that you have to do is when you're putting in your site utilities, as you put in drainage, you have to put erosion control around that drainage. So there's not just silt fence going around the property, but you'll be putting in erosion control throughout the property. Another thing that sometimes you don't think about is you also have to prevent dust. You have a responsibility to keep the dust levels low, and sometimes this will just take watering the site. If you are protecting vegetation, you have to do it in a proper way. The plans that we're using for this example show to protect a tree on the site. When we look at those plans, they show grading almost all the way up to the tree itself. And then the symbol for the tree actually isn't the size of the tree. The tree is, 50 feet wide, and yet they show it just a small little tree. To properly protect the tree, you can't disturb the soil underneath the crown of the tree. it was impossible to save this tree from the very beginning based upon the design. And it turns out that tree isn't there today. Now that you have the demolition done and you have the erosion control in, you can start grading. And you look at the grading plan, and it has a different topography than the existing grade. If you remember, we had this bowl shape, but now we're going to move things out and we're going to flatten things out because we have a lot of paved areas. We're going to have a lot of storm drainage pipe going through this area, so we're going to have to put that in once we have all the grading done. We have lots of paving on this site. It's going to be a big impact to the area. It's going to be a lot of runoff. You have a structure that's going to go on the site. It takes up a lot of the area of the site. This gives you a really good idea of what you have to accomplish on this existing site.